Hi, today we're here to talk about email writing, an important aspect of any modern writing class and probably valuable for just about anybody who is going into the work world or academic world or even the social world these days. Today we're going to talk about a few topics, actually quite a few. And first is, what is email used for? Why would you use email? Who's your audience? It's very important to think about who your audience is and how you're going to communicate with them. Things to think about before writing that email. Comparisons with letter writing, because of course letter writing turned into email writing. Greetings, so how you begin the email, and valedictions, how you end the email. Signatures, how you provide your contact information. Purposes for writing the email, so different types of email based upon your intent. Email outlines, so how to outline your email in a proper way. How do you say it? So, how do you say things in the best way possible to get your point across? Email no-nos, things that you shouldn't be doing, and email must-dos, things that you should be doing. At this point, I'm going to pause, and I'll tell you to press pause on the video. Why don't you go and download all of the materials for this workshop if you don't have them already. They're available on the class website in a zip folder, and there are a number of different documents, including the workshop handout, and we'll be using that quite a bit. The workshop handout is somewhere here, and I'll bring it up for you in a moment. So please go get that stuff, and then we can restart. Okay, so I'm hoping that you got the workshop handout, and here it is on the video. We're going to do activity 1 first. What is email used for? So what I would like you to do is list all the specific ways that you use email. Put them under the headings of personal, professional, or in between, for those things that could be both. Now, of course, right now we're not going to do that discussion, but when you come to the next class, we'll discuss the answers that you provided. So I'm going to pause right now and let you do that. Continue the video when you're done. Alright, well, what kind of answers did you get for what email is used for? Some of the ones that I've provided here are with professional use. You can connect with colleagues, you can exchange ideas, you can make plans, and contribute to listservs or mailing lists. Those are groups of people who email information to each other as a group. For the personal, you can connect with friends and family, exchange ideas, and make plans. Now, of course, this is very similar to the professional uses, but you're going to make different plans and exchange different kinds of ideas. Somewhere in between, you'll do things like communication with businesses on personal matters. So, for example, you might have a complaint about a product and you want to send an email to the company to explain your complaint. You might also love a product and you can tell them how much you like it. Information requests to strangers. When you're dealing with strangers, you tend to be a little bit more formal, yet at the same time it's not exactly a professional interaction. So they're kind of in between. Let's move on. Now, who is your audience? This is very important for you to think about because your audience is going to determine how you write, the language that you use, the complexity that you use, even the ideas that you use. So is it a personal-professional relationship? Is it a position? So are you in a position that's higher than the other person? Are they in a position that's higher than you? Age. Are you older than the other person? Are they older than you? Are you the same age? Socioeconomic status could make a difference, though not always. It could make a difference based upon the vocabulary that you're using or the way in which you're writing. Gender, same thing. Nationality. Nationality could have a difference even between English-speaking countries, but of course certainly between non-English-speaking countries as well. And geographic location. Even different places in the US will communicate in slightly different ways. Now, of these, I think probably the most important are probably the first three. That is, whether it's a personal or professional relationship, whether you have differences in position or differences in age. Because all of these will really impact the formality in which you're writing. Now, I know that most people think that in America age doesn't matter as much. as it would in a place like Korea, but it certainly still does matter. Now, fine differences in age do not, so a year or two difference is certainly not a big deal. But when you're talking about a 10 or 20 year difference in age, people tend to write more formally when they're speaking with someone who is significantly older. And the same is true for differences between professional relationships and personal relationships, and between positions. So as you can imagine, if you're writing a letter to your boss or someone who's in a higher position than you in a different place, you're going to be more formal than if you write to someone who's at the same position or even a lower level position than you are. So before writing that email, you want to ask yourself a few things, because these impact the way that you're going to write your paper, your message. So first of all, why am I writing this email? What is the purpose? What do I expect to come out of this email? Is it just simply to provide information, or is it to get information? So think about why you're writing the email. What do I want that outcome to be? Again, so like I just said. Who should this be sent to, and what is their role? So are you sending it to the right person? That's very important to ask. Or are you possibly even sending this to someone who you think will forward it on to another person? So are you going to send it to somebody's secretary and with the intent of them relaying your message to the person who you want it to get to? Who is the audience? Again, like we spoke about in the last slide. Who is going to be reading this, and how are they related to you? So older, younger, higher position, lower position, familiar. Okay. What is the best approach for communication? So think about it. It's not just about formality. It could also be about the type of language that you use, how direct or indirect you are. So there's many considerations to be made when it comes to how best to communicate what you want to do. And so this is the time where you have to start thinking about that. Okay, so now let's talk about comparisons with letter writing. Of course, letters came before email. We probably don't write many of them anymore. It's pretty rare that you actually write a letter on paper and send it through the mail. But the comparisons between these are pretty direct. So they're very similar in organization and format. You have greetings, you have signatures and footer, and the style is quite similar. However, there are certainly differences. Email generally is shorter. Now, as email becomes more part of people's daily lives, as it has over the last really 20 years, they're becoming even more similar. You see longer emails, you see more formal emails, and less formal emails. So there's quite a variety, but generally, email is shorter. The reality is that email could quickly be sent back and forth. Letters couldn't. You had to wait a couple days between, sending and receiving, and then the other person would have a couple days and send it back. And probably the quickest that you'd get, letter correspondence would be a week, but probably maybe more like a month or 6 months. So. People made them long. They included everything they were thinking, and then they wrote a letter back that included everything that they were thinking. So there's certainly those differences. Emails are generally shorter because there's that expectation of a quick interaction with email. Now, obviously, there are some times where people don't do that, but generally, people expect you to send back the email relatively quickly. There are information gaps can be remedied quickly. So if there's any information that's left out, or if the other person has questions, they can send a quick reply to you and try to figure out what you meant. And recipients likely receive many, many, many more emails than they would have letters. Just from personally mine, my email is full every day. And so I want shorter emails that come to the point quickly, so I can address them and move on. So let's take a look at a letter example and an email example, and they're pretty similar. So here you have the letter example, especially for professional correspondence. You have something like the company name up top, or some kind of letterhead. Letterhead means you have a company logo on the top of the paper. somewhere on the page, either right below the logo or somewhere to the right like this, you'll have the address of the company, the address of the person who's actually sending the letter. You'll have a date, and you'll have the information of the person that you're sending the letter to. Right? So John Smith, PhD, becomes Dr. Smith. So this is your greeting here. This is the body of the letter. Now, of course, for example purposes, this is a little bit short, but very similar to what you'd have in an email. You have a valediction, which means the ending, how you sign off. On a letter, you'll have your actual signature, most likely. And then you might follow up with your typed name and a job title. Email example, on the other hand, is a little bit different. So, email example, of course, you don't have any of those things that you have with letterhead. You essentially have a subject. That subject should be informative and complete. You have the message body. Okay, really not much different than the letter itself. You'll still have a valediction, the ending, sign off, where you'll probably put your name. People don't always do this. They might just put their whole email signature. Now this is a complete email signature, and it has not only my name and my occupation or my job title, but of course the address of my work, my office phone number, fax phone number, and email. You could also have things like your company or personal internet address, your home page. You could have, of course, your mobile phone number, which people have more than ever right now. So, but this is the information in which people can contact you. Okay. So let's move on to the pieces now. The first piece that you're going to have is a greeting. The greeting includes some kind of opener, a possibility of a title, and someone's name. So openers are pretty standard. Hi, hello, dear. Now, of course, these differ on formality. Hi and hello are a little bit more informal or less formal, and dear is a little bit more formal. Titles are generally used in a formal email. Of course, if you're using someone's first name, you don't use a title. So titles are like Mr., Mrs., Ms., Doctor, Professor. There are a number of other titles, but these are probably the most common ones that you'll use. Now, something to consider with names. If the first name is used, an opener can be used, but a title should not be used. And so you could say, hi, Dan. That's no problem. But you don't say, hi, Professor Dan. Right? So as in the example here. So you could either just say Dan or Dear Dan. If a last name only is used, a title must be used. Okay? And an opener is optional. So you can write Mr. Smith or Dear Mr. Smith. You cannot write Dear Smith. And lastly, if a full name is used, neither an opener nor a title should be used. So Dan Smith. This is a impersonal greeting. You often see these on form mails. So these are kind of mails that are usually generated using a database that has people's full information on there. Even in those situations, you don't see that very much these days because it's so impersonal that even computers can be better than that. That's going to end the video part 1. I'll do a part 2 of this workshop where we'll kind of go through activity 2 and we'll talk about the rest of the email. All right. Bye-bye. Hi all. This is part 2 of the email writing workshop. We left off with greetings, and I was describing the different kinds of greetings you can use. Remember that names in this way are used in particular ways when we're doing greetings. Some of them use openers, some use titles, and some do not. So please review that. At this point, I want you to go to Activity 2 in your worksheet. So for Activity 2, what we're going to do here is just choose the right greeting for the right person. So match the email recipients with the proper greetings below. You may have more than one answer for each. Then in a group of 3 or 4, we'll do that in class. Okay? So go ahead. Why don't you pause the video. Okay, good. Well, now that you worked with greetings, let's go to the end of the email and work with valedictions. Valedictions are just a way to sign off on an email, to say goodbye. So it's how you end a message in a letter or email. Most common, the formal valediction is sincerely, and it's pretty much good for almost any usage. It's a little bit formal to use with friends, but still not too bad. And you can use it in formal situations as well. So when in doubt, use sincerely. But there are many other valedictions that exist, ranging from formal to informal. So take a look at Activity 3 in your handout, and there's a nice list here of possible ones. These are not all of the valedictions you can use, but some of them. So things like truly or yours truly, cordially or cordially yours, yours faithfully or faithfully, kind regards, best wishes, goodbye, take care, one of my favorites, bye, talk to you later, peace, love, outie. All right. There's a lot of different ways that you can say goodbye, and you don't even really have to say anything. You could just sign your name. But it's nice to try to match your valediction to your relationship to the person who you're talking to. So what I'd like you to do is take a look at the right side box, and there's a list of different people who you might write an email to. So you have a colleague, someone you work with, a friend, a mother, your mother, your husband or wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, or a boss. Now, as you can imagine, there are different ways that you want to talk to each of these people. So what valedictions would be best to use with each? Take a minute and write those down. Okay, so what answers did you come up with? For a colleague. Colleagues can be kind of in between, can't they? Sometimes people you work with you are actually quite close to and very informal with, and other times you're not. You're going to be more formal. So you could probably use a good range of valedictions with your colleagues. If you're familiar with them, if you're friendly with them, let's say, hey, maybe you guys get together on the weekends and drink some beers and go bowling. Well, if you're doing that, you can be quite informal. You could do things like goodbye, take care, bye, talk to you later, peace, love, out. Right? However, if that's not your relationship, if your relationship is a little less familiar, then you might want to use something more formal. Sincerely would certainly be one of those. Truly, cordially, those might be a little too formal for a colleague, but they're possibly, best regards is a nice general purpose one, best wishes, and even something that requires a follow-up, something like let me know what you think, right? So there are a number of different valedictions that you can use, but you have to base it upon your relationship. Now with a friend, it's a little bit clearer, right? Because obviously a friend is a friend. You're less formal with your friends. And so you can pretty much choose anything. It would be strange to use something too formal, though, with them. So if you're saying truly or cordially or faithfully yours, it's a little strange. It's a little awkward. You probably want to use something a little less formal, like bye, see ya. Okay? With your mother, well, again, your mother are kind of like a colleague. Some people have more formal relationships with mothers, others less formal. And I think generally people have a less formal relationship with their mother. And for that, signing off with your mother, I recommend love. Because, come on, your mother wants to hear that you love her. Same could probably be true for your husband or wife, boyfriend and girlfriend. Though maybe you have to be a little careful with boyfriend and girlfriend. But generally probably sign off with peace or bye or see you later. With your boss, in most cases you're going to be quite formal with your boss. Now that's not always true. Sometimes you have a more less formal relationship with your boss, but generally you're going to be formal in an email. And so for that, you're probably going to do something like sincerely, best regards, even truly, cordially, maybe those as well. But those are very distant. So I don't know if you really want to use those. Those might be a little bit too formal. Okay. So in the end here, you just want to choose something that is the best fit for the person who you're corresponding with. So now we talked about how to sign off. Well, now we need to know about a signature. A signature is just basically telling people your information, how to contact you, what job you have. Okay, they want to know a little bit more about you at the end of the email. You really should put these at the end of every email. It's very difficult to understand someone's name from their email address. If your email address is bigguy@hotmail.com, I don't really know who you are. So at the end of the email, it's a good idea to not only write your name, but also your contact information. And in business, you probably want to put more information than you would on maybe a personal email. So the signatures vary greatly depending upon things like profession and even familiarity with the correspondent. So if you're sending something to a friend, you probably don't have to send your signature necessarily. You probably just sign off. But if you're doing almost anything else, you probably should include one. Familiar contacts can be sent any kind of signature in an email, informal or based on your personal taste. More formal contacts and all professional contacts, and including your professor, by the way, should use a formal signature. Formal signatures can include the following, and they don't necessarily have to, though. Your full name and relevant certifications. So you'll often see people include things like PhD or other professional certifications like CPA, MD. Your job title. So what job are you doing? What's your official title and what company? The department or group name and the institution name. Now, you might not have all this information. If you're in a university, you probably would. The institution would be Sangmyung University in our case, and the department or group name might be English Education. However, if you're at a company, a small company, you might not have different groups. You might just have the company name. But if you're at a large company, you certainly do. So if you're, let's say, at Samsung, the institution name is maybe Samsung Electronics, and in Samsung Electronics you might be in the training and human resources department. You want to put an address. Now these days obviously addresses are becoming a little less important just because we don't tend to send things to people anymore like we used to in using regular mail and letters. But it's still important that people have that information, particularly if you're writing a professional email. Your office phone number. Okay. An optional mobile phone number, though that's becoming pretty common these days. Even a lot of people don't even have an office phone number separately. They just have a mobile phone. An office fax. Faxes, we're not using them as much as we used to, but they're still used a bit. And your email. These are things that you should generally put in your signatures. As I said, they're not always required, but it's a good idea to. At the very, very, very minimum, you need to put your name and your email address so I know who to get back to. Let's take a look at activity 4. So right now I want you to write your own signature. Now you can be creative and make your dream signature. Pick a dream job and you can make it for that one. Or you could just make your own personal signature at this point. Either way, try to use as much of that information as possible and provide that to me. So at least your full name. Instead of job title, you could always tell me that you're a student. You could say you're an undergraduate student at Sangmyung University in the English Education Department. Okay, so be a little creative. But on the right side here, please write your signature for me, okay? I'll wait for you to finish. Okay, So now that you've finished your signature, let's move on to the purposes for writing email. Three that I'm picking out here, though these are certainly not the only purposes, but they cover a wider range of emails, are providing information, and requesting action. So why don't you take a look at these examples here. So the first one is requesting information. There we go. So when we request information, we want to give the person a good idea of what it is that we're requesting, but also in addition to that, who we are, why we're asking them, and so forth. So note the overall format of the email here. You have your subject that hopefully is quite descriptive. Okay? Don't just say hi. Nobody wants to see that in their subject. They want to see exactly what it is. And I'm going to start this off formally. Dear Dr. Park, my name is Daniel Morgan and I am an associate professor at Cobalt University. I attended your presentation, Microbiology in the Modern Hospital, at the International Association of Physicians conference in February, and I am very interested in your ideas. Now, of course, in this way, I'm being quite formal. I don't really know this person personally, and so not only am I going to address them in the greeting formally, but I'm also going to provide some information about who I am and why I'm contacting them. So in this situation, I'm telling them my name and my job, and also how I know of them and their work. So then in the next paragraph, what I'm going to do is try to clearly ask what I need this person to do for me. So, request that information. So would it be possible for you to send me a copy of your presentation for me to show to my colleagues here at Cobalt University? So I clearly want the presentation that I mentioned in the previous paragraph. Also, adding a second request, could you suggest some other authors writing on this topic? So I make two very clear requests towards the beginning of the email. I don't need to write a very, very long introduction about this. I just need to generally say who I am, how I know them, and then quickly get to my request. Then I give them some possibilities for contacting me or sending me information. You can email me at this address referring to the one that I'm emailing from right now, dmorgan@cobalt.edu, or you may call me at my office, and I give the phone number at my office. You don't always have to provide this information, but it's not a bad idea to provide your email even if it's clear because you just sent them an email from that address. Lastly, you're going to thank them. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to hearing from you. Okay. Sincerely, a good general formal valediction, Dan. Now at the end here, I use my first name and even the shortened version of my first name because I'm trying to convey to the doctor that I want to be on informal terms. Okay. And so in his response to me, he is free to refer to me as Dan at this point, though since we don't know each other, he'll probably refer to me as Professor Craig or Dr. Craig or something like that. Then at the end, I put my signature. So I put my name, my title, or the certifications that I've gotten, my job title, the department that I'm in, the university I work for, my address at the university, relevant telephone and fax numbers, email address, and I'll even put my professional web address. So that's one example of a requesting information email. Of course, there are many ways to write these, but in the end, you want to remember what we said before, is that you want to introduce yourself in a basic, simple way. You want to relate why or how you came to contact this person, and then you want to ask them for whatever it is you want to ask them for. Okay? Try to do that as clearly and simply as possible. That's it for part 1 of our video, or part 2, sorry, and now we're going to have to move on to part 3. Hello, welcome to part 3 of the email writing workshop. Last we left off, we were talking about emails that were requesting information. Now we're going to talk a little bit about replying, because of course replying in this case is important if someone requests information, isn't it? So when you were requesting information, you sent a message and you said who you were and how you know that person or why you were contacting them. Then you gave them a request, and then you signed off. Well, with the reply, you're going to, well, of course, reply to that request or the information that they've provided or so forth. So as you see here, in the reply, you have the RE. And RE is usually added in a lot of email systems. If it's not, you might want to do it yourself, but I'm assuming in your system it is. It's standard. So that's a reply, and it uses the original subject heading. Now this is another reason why it's important to have a good descriptive subject heading, because you're going to have to live with it for a while. So in the message, they reply, "Hi, Dan." Now remember, in my previous email, I had signed off with the name Dan because I was indicating that I was interested in being less formal. And in their reply, they did that. They replied in an informal manner, "Hi, Dan." I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed the presentation. I'm happy to provide you with a copy of my presentation. Please see the attached PowerPoint document. So I'm acknowledging what the request was and thanking them for their interest, okay, and telling them that I will send it to them, and in fact here telling them to see the attached PowerPoint. So in this message I've attached something. It's a good habit when you send a file in an email that you reference it in the actual email message. Okay. Now obviously people can see this, but it's kind of a good idea, especially because spam messages don't tend to reference the email, and at least not specifically. And so if you're sending something to someone, especially if you don't know them very well, and you're sending them a file, it's kind of nice to write in the message something about the file. There was a second part of the request that I sent originally, and that was, can you tell me other people who write about this topic? And so I'll reply to that. Other people working in the same area are John Smith at Johns Hopkins. So usually, oftentimes, people will say a person's name, an author's name, a researcher's name, and the place that they work. And Paula Brewer at University of Minnesota. I suggest starting with Smith's, that means the author's name, Smith. What you can't see can hurt you, in the journal Nature, and when it was published. Okay. So he's provided me some information about who to read and given me a recommendation of where to start. Okay. Then I add, if you have any questions, let me know. So I'm keeping the possibility open for further communication. I don't necessarily have to do that, and honestly, if I don't write that, maybe I'm not interested in him emailing me anymore. Though I'm putting it in there because I'm open to that idea. Now again, I'm using sincerely, even though I'm using a less formal reply. But like I said, sincerely can pretty much be used for just about anything other than it's probably not used with close friends. And I'm replying with the first name, a given name, right? So I'm continuing that on. I'm encouraging the person that I'm corresponding with to refer to me by my first name. But then I also put my signature. So the full name and certification, PhD, job title, department, institution, address, relevant phone and fax numbers, email, and again, even a personal website. Not a bad idea if you do have one. So now that you've seen some examples of information request emails and reply emails, I want to point out some outlines and some general structures that you can use. And of course, I've kind of already discussed them a little bit, but let's get in more detail. So for the information request outline, first I want you to introduce yourself if the recipient doesn't know you. Even if they do, maybe it's not a bad idea to introduce yourself if there's some distance between you and them. Let the recipient know why this request is being made. So why are you sending the email to them specifically? In the first few sentences, clearly and politely make your request. Now, it's usually a good idea, in my opinion, to leave your request for a separate paragraph. So first introduce yourself very briefly, and then make a new paragraph to ask your request. If there are many parts to your request, it's not a bad idea to use some kind of bulleted list. You know, the bulleted list is when you make a list and you use the ... right? When doing that, it makes it a lot easier to see exactly what you're requesting and make sure that I can go down the list and kind of check off the things that I've done. Describe why you need this information. You know, this is important almost in any correspondence. It's not just, please give me this. Tell me why you need it, what you're going to use it for. Okay? Because if I understand that, first of all, it's just more polite to include that information. Also, I'm just more likely to give it to you if you tell me why. Provide contact information for question or comments. So your email address, phone number. I would say probably include both of those. Since you're going to put those in your signature anyway, you might just say, please see my contact information below, and they can look in your signature. Thank them for their assistance. So if you're going to make a request to somebody, certainly you should be thanking them. Even before they do it, you say, you know, thank you for your help, thank you for reading my mail, thank you for assisting me, something like that. Okay. So let's take a look at activity 5. So here, you're going to make an information request. So what I'd like you to do, and I know this is more of a group activity, but I think we can do this individually regardless. I would like you to pick one of the characters you see below, and I've described a number of different people and given them some characteristics. You have Youngmin Kim. Youngmin Kim is a Sangmyung University undergraduate student, probably similar to you. Daesam Kwang is a 50-year-old parent of a student at Sangmyung University, so maybe one of your parents. Dr. Jungtae Im is a 75-year-old retired professor, so he's a very senior professor. Okay, you've heard about the program and you want more information. So you have not met Professor Craig yet, but you've heard about him. And Dr. Ho-Sung Lee. He's a colleague of Professor Craig, and you see each other every day, and your children go to the same school. So now back up to the top here. What you're going to do is you're going to make an information request. You are one of these people below, right? One of these 4 people, and you are writing a letter to Daniel Craig. So if you look at the activity 5, you'll see that the recipient, the person you're writing the letter to, is Daniel Craig. He's a professor at Sangmyung University in Seoul. He's in charge of bringing a group of students to Indiana University next summer. He's an American and is about 35 years old. Okay, I'm a little older than that. He has a friendly demeanor, but he is rather formal with people he's never met. So you're going to make a request. You want more information about the study abroad program at Indiana University. So you should request information about the program, including dates, cost, and a general description of the program. Okay? So at this point right now, please pause the video and write your request. Now please make sure that you include all of the pieces of an email that we've talked about already. So you're going to have a good subject, you're going to have a greeting, you're going to have the message body in which you do all of the things that you're supposed to do in an information request. You're going to have a valediction, some way of saying bye, sincerely. And you're going to have a signature. Okay? So please pause the video and do that now, and then come back when you're done. Okay. Well, I hope you've made a really good information request email. Now we're going to do the other side, and you're going to take the other position. Now you are Professor Craig. Congratulations. So you're going to write a reply. So what's in a reply? So let's take a look at the outline. Greet the person with the same level of formality with which they signed their original message. Now this is usually true, but not always true. Sometimes someone will end their message using their first name, which indicates a less formal tone. But with someone like the 75-year-old professor, you might still want to be more formal, right? And so you have a decision to make here, and there's no necessarily wrong answer, but when in doubt, be more formal. Some level of humility or empathy is often expressed. Okay, so thank you for your questions. Let me try to answer them. I understand your concern over this procedure, but I agree with your opinion that ... Okay, so you're just acknowledging something that they've said, and hopefully that makes for a better connection between you two. Restate the key points that you're responding to. So if they ask for more information about the program, say, below is more information about the program, the costs, and the dates. That's as simple as you can make it. Okay, so now you're going to write your reply. So take your original message that you made before, and you're going to now reply to it. And so you've received a letter requesting information about the new study abroad program. You are inclined to reply to the requests if they are appropriately written. I'm assuming they are. Reply to the email in an equally appropriate tone, form, and style. Review the characters, information, and activity 5, sorry it says 3 here, to do this properly. Okay? So consider the person who made the request and then reply appropriately to them. Alright? So pause the video until you're done doing that. Okay, so I'm going to end part 3 right now. There will be a part 4 where we're going to talk about language use in the emails. Stay tuned for that. Bye-bye. Welcome to part 4 of the email writing workshop. In the previous sections, what we did was we kind of talked about the pieces of email, the sections of email. We talked about how they were outlined, what was in each part. Now we're going to talk about how you say things, the language that you use, and the tone with which you say. Two of the things that we want to think about are whether we're being direct or indirect. Generally, direct is seen as, well, less polite, and indirect is probably more polite. It's not always true. It depends on who is speaking and who is listening. Generally, though, being direct is brief. It's shorter. It only addresses the relevant points, only the essential elements of what the person wants to say, and it pays little attention to politeness. Being indirect is more wordy. Wordy means just it uses more words. You often hear more modals, more phrases that are used to soften a request or a comment. It also might include extended descriptions and explanations. So some examples of being direct. Send me all information you have on patient 1000534. Okay, which is very quick and to the point, right? Reply to me as soon as you get this email. Give me the numbers on your recent experiments. Okay, so these things leave, don't use other information, extra words. They're just straight and to the point. This is being direct. However, being indirect, slightly different. Without me even reading these, you can see that they're longer. That's a part of being indirect. They're wordier, right? Whenever you have the time, could you send me all the information you have on patient 1000534? I need it for a presentation tomorrow. Okay, so you see we've added things. Whenever you have the time, could you? Okay, then we give an explanation. I need it for a presentation tomorrow. This extra information is a little less direct, but it's generally seen as being more polite. Sorry to bother you. If you could reply to me as soon as possible, I would appreciate it. Okay, so we added things like sorry to bother you. If you could, I would appreciate it. Right. If it isn't too much trouble, could you give me the numbers on your recent experiments? I would like to summarize our progress for the head of the department. So again, if it isn't too much trouble, could you, right? I would like to summarize our progress for the head of the department, an explanation. Adding these extra words make it wordier. In general, it also makes it more polite, okay? And it's certainly a little less direct. So with this in mind, take a look at some of these examples and see if you can choose the correct response to the situation. So first one, you're sending an email to your boss. Which one do you think would be more appropriate? Dr. Smith, send me the notes from your meeting with the administration yesterday. I need those to complete my project today. Or B, John, would it be possible for you to send me your notes from your meeting with the administration yesterday? I need those to complete my project today. Which one do you think would be more appropriate for your boss? Why don't you pause the video now and think about that? Well, this isn't a simple answer. It kind of depends on your relationship to your boss. Generally, we think of our boss as being someone who we're more formal with, but sometimes you can be less formal. And so here, when you see Dr. Smith, you think that we're being more formal with him. But however, the email itself is rather direct, and you might not be writing that way with your boss. You might want to write something that's a little less formal, in this case though, but more polite. So sample B, I think, would probably be better if you're on a first name basis with your boss, that is. John, would it be possible for you to send me your notes from the meeting with the administration yesterday? Would it be possible for you to do this? Okay, it's a softened response. And then an explanation. I need those to complete my project today. So between those two, the second one is a little less direct and probably would be considered a little more appropriate in this situation. Oops, sorry. Example number 2, you're sending an email to your colleague. John, I liked your presentation today on your recent research. Could you send me a copy of your presentation and references? Or, Dear John, I liked your presentation today on your recent research. I hate to bother you, but I was wondering if I could get a copy of your presentation and notes. I would really appreciate it. Why don't you pause now and think about which one would be better to send to your colleague. Well, again, it really depends upon the relationship that you have with your colleague. Now, you could have a more formal relationship or a less formal relationship, but in general, this is someone you work with, and you probably are on a first name basis with them. You really don't have to say Dear John. It's a little more formal. And you probably don't have to make a wordy request. You could make something a little bit more direct because in this situation, it's probably not a very big request. It's something that can be easily done. Okay, so again, you do have a decision, but in this situation, sample A is probably better. So, example number 3, you're sending an email to your assistant. That's someone who works for you or works under you. Sample A, send me a copy of my presentation and references from yesterday's presentation to Dr. Anderson at jananderson@university.edu. Or, Mark, could you send a copy of my presentation and references from yesterday's presentation to Dr. Anderson at janderson@university.edu. Why don't you pause and take a minute to think about it. Okay, so this is someone who works for you. Now, again, what is the relationship between you? You know, I've had some bosses who have been quite polite to me, and maybe sometimes overly polite or unnecessarily polite, and others who were quite direct and didn't really pay much attention to politeness. So, and the first one would be completely acceptable and probably rather normal. It's very direct. Send me this. Okay? There's no explanation of reason why. There's no extra information. Heck, he doesn't even put a greeting in there. Just send me this. And the second one, a little less direct. Okay? Now, this is probably a nicer way to send an email to your assistant, but I'd probably say it's a little less common. Okay. So now let's talk about our email no-nos. These are things that you shouldn't be doing in your emails. The first one is unrestrained CCing. CC means carbon copy, or it means that I'm going to send this to people who are related to the project, but maybe not directly related to the project. Now, one problem is that in many organizations and with many groups, they CC everybody, and people who don't even need the email are getting this email. I know that's true in my organization as well. Only send an email to someone who really needs to see it. Okay? And that's probably not an entire department. It's probably one person within the department. Another one is non-descriptive subjects. Listen, your subject heading, you know, the subject of the email should be descriptive and brief. All right? Make sure that it describes the content of the email and the purpose of the email, but does so very in a short space. You know, probably I would guess around 5 to 7 words, you know, because you don't have a lot of space in your email client to actually see and read the whole subject. Stay away from complex font styles. A lot of people like to send these very complicated, you know, pretty emails and use complicated fonts and stationery, which is the next item. But a lot of email clients can't even see those. And sometimes they see them and they're all mixed up. Okay? Just keep basic, simple text. Complex signatures and footers. Stay away from those as well. Just give people your basic information. Don't make any pretty pictures. Unsignaled and unapproved attachments. If you put an attachment in an email, tell them you're going to send an attachment. And the last one, long URLs. You know, you can put a long URL in an email, but there could be problems with it. Oftentimes long URLs can get broken. One thing you can use is a URL shortener. So services like tinyurl.com or bit.ly, bit.ly is a website. They make the URL shorter and more manageable. So some of the NoNo examples. Take a look at this one and tell me what the NoNo is in it. Well, one significant NoNo in here is that there's an attachment, but it's not signaled in the email. You should say that we will be, I'll send you this this document. Okay. What's the email NoNo here? The NoNo here is the overly complicated signature. You don't need that. Maybe it looks pretty, but it's not necessary. NoNo example 3, what's this? Here the NoNo is this overly long URL. You can certainly shorten this with a URL shortener to make it more manageable and understandable. So now let's move on to the must-dos. Number 1, and a lot of these are just opposite of the no-nos. A descriptive subject heading, clear, concise writing, clear, simple email style, Signatures, you have to have them. And reply with message history intact. That means that all of the messages that on this subject that came before should still be in the email listed below the current message. So, conclusion. Emails are written for a specific audience. Always consider that audience when you're writing your email, and that will change what you say and how you say it. Emails are written for a specific purpose. Make sure that you achieve that purpose quickly and clearly. Emails have their own etiquette. Emails are generally short. They're generally pointed. They're a little more direct often than letter writing. Okay? Well, that's it for the email writing workshop. I hope you enjoyed what I put down here. It was a little rough, but I think we got all the information out that needed to be given. Have a good day. Bye-bye.